Now, Behind the Law with Justin Clark and Allie Mack on ESPN 580 Orlando.
And welcome to the program. It's another edition of Behind the Law right here on ESPN 580 Orlando. Thank you for spending your weeknights here with us on our favorite sports radio station. You can also watch the program 4 o'clock p.m. every single weekday at Behind the Law Radio on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, any social media platform. Also, don't forget to watch the television programs this weekend and every weekend. Saturday at 12:30 p.m. on CBS at You Have Real Estate with me, attorney Justin Clark. And then Sunday mornings, TV 27. It is this program at 10 a.m. It's Behind the Law on television. Sunday morning, 10 a.m., TV 27. I have the Briannas here today. Brianna OG, how are you?
Awesome. How are you?
And new Brianna, what's going on? How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Thank you for being here. Very special show today. We're going to do What's Going On. We'll also play Stump the Clarkie in the second half hour. And a very special interview with the Sheriff of Seminole County. We've been trying to get him on here for a while. Dennis Lemma will join us as well. But first, it's time to do some news. I don't really see much going on in the news today. I hope you have something.
I have.
Maybe I just haven't had time to really watch any news today. I don't know. But
I certainly have. All right, what is going on in the news? So sports news, the Curry brothers will take center stage tonight as they play against each other. So they will make history. They will be the first brothers to ever play against each other in the finals.
What a family, huh?
Finals.
What a family.
Isn't that amazing?
I mean, how much money does this family have at this point?
That is exciting. But who are the parents going to root for?
I have no idea. It's
Right?
going to be one of these things where, like, one parent wears one shirt, the other parent wears the other shirt, or you have one of those shirts that have the line down the middle.
House divided.
We'll see.
House divided for sure. Local news. So the city of Orlando will vote to decide whether Camping World Stadium should receive 90 new metal detectors.
Didn't they vote yesterday?
The results didn't come out yet.
Wow.
Yeah, I guess they're still
They're
deciding.
still deciding. They're still voting.
They're still voting.
That's exciting.
That would be great, though.
I also feel like Camping World Stadium should maybe already have metal detectors. Is that just me?
I would think so.
They used to rent them, I
The
heard.
good thing is we're going to have a sheriff in a minute, so we'll be able to ask that
Well,
question
that'll be good
and
because
plenty more.
that's kind of concerning.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
they didn't have them already.
We'll ask Sheriff Lemma here in just a minute on that one.
And then in California, so they're selling coffee for $75 a cup. In
cup?
California.
Like gold-plated or something? What is this?
The coffee is
platinum in
from
the coffee.
Panama.
Oh, yes. The Panamanian coffee is...
You have something to do with that,
It is
Justin?
terrific. What?
You have something to do with that?
No, I mean, I just got
just
back
came
from
from
Panama,
Panama.
but I didn't bring any coffee. I actually have a client who owns a farm in Panama that produces coffee.
Is that the one that's selling the $75 a cup situation?
It could be. I'll call her after the show and see what's going on.
Jeez.
Invest in her.
Man.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. Anything else in the news today?
Disney, they have reached a deal with Comcast, so they will take over Hulu.
They are.
I'm a Netflix person. I don't really have Hulu.
Yeah, you know what? I've said on the show a million times, I love the whole cut the cord thing, cancel your cable. But at this point, you cut the cord and it costs you more than it does to just have cable. You got to have Netflix, Hulu, DirecTV Now. I mean, at some point you start adding it up and you're like, it's just easier to have cable again.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's
true.
so many Brianna, OG Brianna, what do you watch TV on?
I definitely stream,
Okay.
and I do. You're right. I have multiple packages. So I
Right.
do the Netflix. I have Hulu. I have my HBO Go, Amazon Now. I mean, all these different things to stream your television. And you look up, and you're like, wait a minute. It almost costs the same as having Spectrum or anyone else.
New Brianna, where do you watch TV?
I have cable, and then I use like Netflix,
Okay.
things like that. Yeah,
Good deal. Anything else going on in the news today?
that is all.
All right, thank you very much. You're listening to Behind the Law, ESPN 580 Orlando. My name is Justin Clark, joined today by a very special guest. He is the Sheriff of Seminole County, Dennis Lemma. How are you, sir?
I am absolutely wonderful. Thank you for having me on.
So a police officer in some capacity since at least 1992. It's always cool to be a cop. Your kid will come home and say, my dad is a police officer. But now, for the last 3 years, the Sheriff of Seminole County, you're a public figure now.
Right.
How did the family adjust to you going from police officer to now this public figure? You were just daddy there for a while, or just hubby, but now daddy and hubby is this public figure, and when you go out, people know who you are. How did the family adjust?
Yeah, for me, the change was gradual. I think that more and more over my 27-year career here, I started to have a larger and larger footprint. So, one of the greatest experiences that I had before becoming sheriff was serving as the chief deputy. which essentially was the chief operating officer of a 1,400-member organization. And by that time, I had already served as the public spokesperson for the sheriff's office for 3 years. It was very common for me to be on television and get my face associated with negative news or crazy things that are happening.
Sure.
So I think for them, I thought it would maybe be cooler than what it was. And, even for myself, I thought that maybe I'm going to lay my head down after winning the election and feel different when I wake up. And I remember looking at my wife and talking to my family and said, nope, I just feel like the same Dennis I was when I was chief deputy. So it wasn't really that big of a transition for me.
But first of all, and you know how I feel about the job that you and your crew are doing up there. It's fantastic. Yes. I mean, I'm just so proud I live in Seminole County. I'm so proud of what you're doing and your whole team. But the statistics really prove out my theory. I mean, the crime is down, is it not?
Yeah. So what we are tracking right now is the lowest crime rate in the 106-year history of Seminole County. And to put it in perspective, that over the past 40 years, let's just say 40 years, the population in Seminole County has grown by 230%. We're now the third most densely populated county in the state of Florida, with 325 square miles and a population hovering just below 500,000. But when you look at the crime rate, and that's the crime per every 100,000 citizens, in the past 40 years, the crime rate has been reduced by 77%.
Jeez.
Now, if that number is not impressive enough, the crime volume, which means the raw number of criminal reports in 1978 was larger than it was in 2018. And every time I share those numbers and I share those stats, and that's just not a reflection of what we're doing as an agency, it's the collaboration between law-abiding citizens and us. But citizens scratch their head and say, you know what, Dennis or Sheriff, I was here in 78, and I don't feel any safer now than I did back then. I remind them that 40 years ago, you needed to know the sheriff personally to actually find out what was going on. And if something happened here in your studio today, Justin, I'm telling you, within 15 minutes, 269-3513 DBO, and some folks that work in your office that have phones would start a live feed blog, and I would be telling them everything that I know within minutes after it happened. It simply didn't happen 40 years ago, so it has an effect on people's perception of crime. But we're safer now than we were even 40 years ago.
How would you say your life has changed, your daily life, your daily grind, so to speak, from chief deputy to now the real true leader being sheriff of Seminole County?
Yeah, for me, it's the greatest responsibility that any one person can take on is to uphold people's constitution. I drive through Seminole County, and the realization comes across you that these 500,000 people depend on our team and me personally to provide safety and security against any threats that may be foreign or domestic, and that is a big responsibility to really take on.
I think some people get confused even as to how one becomes sheriff. I think people understand that they elect their state representative, but I think people get a little confused between the state reps and things like that, and then the constitutional officers like the tax collector and that sort of thing. How do you really become sheriff?
Yeah, so there's a very, very neat history here, and actually the office of the sheriff is one of the oldest known public offices in existence. Dates back for more than 1,000 years. Wow. And when kings would have rule over in England, they would have rule over a shire. And they would find a guardian to maintain control. And as long as people has co-located together, there's been knuckleheads causing trouble and problems. So what they would do is they would find a reeve of the shire. And the shire reeve is how it evolved over here in the United States in the 1600s. And it still is the only law enforcement official in the country that is elected by the people to serve the people. Every other law enforcement leader has a boss, whether it's at the federal, state, or local level. The sheriff has a boss. The boss is the people that they serve, which provides a greater level of independence to offer whatever opinion we want to offer about whatever's going on. That's why sometimes you turn on whatever cable news channel you see, and you see a sheriff sometimes standing in full uniform, offering a level of candor that's in the best interest of their constituents, or at least they feel it is.
Absolutely. I don't know if it's the greatest crisis that we have in our community right now, but it is certainly up there. And I think all of us know someone who's been addicted to these painkillers or these opioids or now even heroin. And what can we do as a community to combat the opioid crisis we have right here in our community? Let's ask Sheriff Dennis Lemma that right on the other side of this break. It is Behind the Law, ESPN 580 Orlando. What's so funny?
Thought you were gonna ask him. I'm like, here we go.
You gotta tease something, right?
Yeah. I'm like, don't stop. Just land the plane.
Oh, you were watching the time.
I was.
I see.
I was like, oh man, here he goes.
You got to keep everything on track, huh?
I
Tried to.
have the time here, but sometimes she gets a little nervous if I go over. She starts yelling at me.
He goes way over.
That's
sometimes.
very much like my chief of staff over there.
Yeah.
He gives me the cut every time. He says, hey, we got to go. We got to.
Yeah,
Wrap that up.
exactly.
It's a 2 handshake limit.
Yeah.
Jeez.
All right, you guys ready?
Let's do it.
Now back to Behind the Law with Justin Clark, right here on ESPN 580 Orlando.
Welcome back to the program. It is Behind the Law, ESPN 580 Orlando. My name is Justin Clark. Thanks for spending your evenings with us on our favorite sports radio station, ESPN 580. I've got Sheriff Dennis Lemma here to my left. Sheriff, I saw that the fantastic new Attorney General that we had, Ashley Moody, has been working directly with you to combat this opioid crisis. And it is a crisis, no doubt about it. And I know that you're really heading the charge for the state in regards to trying to help fix this problem. How big of a problem is it, and what can we do?
So let me put it in perspective. Across the country right now, we're losing 74,000 people a year. Across the state of Florida, it's 17 people a day are dying as a result of an opioid-related overdose. In Seminole County, I would argue one of the most affluent, well-run counties, great government, great quality of life, wonderful schools. We had more than 650 overdoses. By the way, that number's underreported. 650 overdoses last year. We deployed naloxone or Narcan, which is an antagonist of the opioid that attaches to the receptors of the brain. We deployed that 450 times approximately last year, which quite literally brought people back to life for 90 minutes. And then we had 82 deaths. So if you take every act of gun violence, intentional and accidental, and every person who died in an automobile accident or crash combined, we're losing twice as many people to an opioid-related overdose. Even at the height of the crack cocaine epidemic in the mid-'80s, we're losing 6 times more people now than what we ever did back then. Surprisingly, 85% of these individuals were at one time legally prescribed a opioid-related narcotic for a legitimate pre-existing medical condition, which, quite frankly, has changed the face of addiction. We started a new team called the SCORE team. It's the Seminole Collaborative Opioid Response Effort, and we did that because I came to the conclusion that the greatest predictor of whether or not somebody will overdose and die is whether or not they've overdosed and lived. And what has happened in the past, if somebody in your studio here passed out and became unresponsive for whatever medical episode that they were going through, we would call EMS, paramedics. They would respond here. They would stabilize the person. They would be transported to a local hospital. They would be triaged, and then they would be referred to a specialist to receive some type of long-term service, and medicine probably would be a big part of that. What we do with the opioids up until this point is we've had somebody overdose. We've used the narcotic to bring them back to life. We've stabilized them. We've taken them to the hospital, triaged them, and then ultimately released them back into the same environment that they overdosed in the first place.
Right.
So we have to treat this differently than what we've treated in the past. You know, my colleagues have tried to scare people away from using drugs. It simply doesn't work. We know that 1 out of every 10 people are genetically inclined towards addiction, and this is a remarkable number. We know that 1 out of every 3 people know somebody who is personally on their journey to recovery. And this is not a situation of making bad people good, but rather sick people well, while all at the same time taking a hard stance on the drug dealers. In Seminole County, we were able to successfully prosecute 13 individuals with first-degree murder if they dealt deadly doses of narcotics. And this is a thing that other jurisdictions around the state are not able to do. We're able to do that because we have a wonderful state attorney in Phil Archer and a great working relationship with our state attorney's office.
Beautiful. So has the opioid crisis really spilled over into heroin use as well?
So here's what happens. Florida was one of the last states to enter the game to create the prescription pill monitoring system. Mm-hmm. At that time, every contiguous state was pleading with our lawmakers, create a system because all of the citizens living in our jurisdictions are going down to Florida. What they called it is the Opioid Express. They go down here and pill mill shop at any one of the 850 pill mills across the state. And at the time, Attorney General Bob Butterworth entered into a lawsuit against Purdue Pharma, and that settled for $2 million that was earmarked to create a prescription pill monitoring system. When Attorney General Pam Bondi really took the leadership and created that system, we did what we do best. We closed those pill mills down. The only problem is the tens of thousands of people that were in line had nowhere else to go other than street-level heroin. And despite what people may think, the heroin is coming into this country largely from Mexico. And what our drug dealers are doing is they're saying, if I have a certain amount of heroin, I square up with my drug supplier in Mexico, and they're no longer in my business. And then what the drug dealer does is they try to find a way to spread out the financial profit of selling those drugs. And the way they do it is get synthetic opioids from China. This is fentanyl or carfentanyl.
And it's one of these things where certainly the person who's buying the opioids, who's addicted, yes, they're criminals. But my goodness, don't you think some of these doctors who knew there's no way they should be prescribing this medication to some of these people? I mean, where was the liability in the medical profession? There must have been some, right?
Yeah, well, we prosecuted a lot of them. But, an unprecedented thing happened is Purdue Pharmaceutical, which is the maker of OxyContin, worked with the Food and Drug Administration, an individual, Curtis Wright, who was an executive at the Food and Drug Administration at the time, and they made an unprecedented statement. They said because of the slow-released formula of OxyContin, it was less than 0.5% likely to become addictive. So what we had was a combination of legitimate doctors that thought that they were doing the right thing and crooked doctors that were running pill mills. And it was in the late 90s that my colleagues, law enforcement leaders, and addiction specialists started to tell Purdue, hey, listen, people are dying because it's easy to misuse, and it's becoming pure heroin on the street. And that's what's happening now. People are dying at record numbers because you can't get opioids, medical opioids anymore because of the prescription pill monitoring system.
Right.
And Purdue finally adjusted the formula where you cannot misuse it the way you were using it before.
And the owners of Purdue, it was the family up in New York. I forgot their names. They were actually they were double dipping. They were in the Sacklers, right? Yeah. Now they're excommunicated in the city of New York social scene and that sort of thing. But they actually owned the company, were selling the drugs to help the addicted people to the to OxyContin. It was really kind of a terrible. They knew what they were doing.
As well as the antagonist. Yeah. I mean, it's pharmaceutical companies that sell the antagonist that reverses the effects of the opioids.
Absolutely unbelievable to me. But it is a crisis, and thank you guys for what you're doing over in Seminole County. We had a very special guest on a couple of days ago. His name is Jeff Brown. He's an Orange County sheriff, and he has a great group. Brianna, you're going to have to look up the golf tournament that we're having here soon. We got to tell Sheriff Lemma about this.
I have a flyer for him.
Okay, so we'll give him a flyer. But it really, what he does, he created a group, Sheriff, where we understand that people who are in the military and the PTSD after they come back, and tons of groups really created to help our men and women coming back from war or from overseas. But the first responders, I mean, the police officers out there, the things that they see on a daily basis, and the heroism that they go through every single day, it can create PTSD as well, can it not?
Oh, I tell you, we see it at record numbers. I mean, the law enforcement career is still one of the top careers for suicide. And what has happened, over the years is we have become more aware and smarter about ways to address this. Even when I started 27 years ago, and I served in the Marine Corps as well, and there was this kind of attitude of big boys and big girls don't cry. And if you ever built up enough courage to ask for help internally, either through an employee assistance program or anything, you felt like you had a black mark on your career or people were going to talk negatively about you. I'm absolutely convinced that that has resulted in an increased amount of overdoses or, at bare minimum, broken families. I mean, people go home and they see the most terrible things. To give you an example, to tie into the opioid, just a few months ago, we had 3 people who were overdosed and deceased in the car. 2 deputies arrive on scene, and the first deputy and the second deputy that arrived, the decision that they have to make is, what 2 of the 3 do I revive and bring back to life first? Luckily, a third deputy was able to get there, and we were able to save all 3 of them. But these are the types of decisions that the men and women who are on that thin blue line day in and day out, walking and protecting our domestic and international freedom, ask for very little in return, and we have to be there to support our police, our fire, our medical, and our military.
Yeah, the first responders, I think, maybe don't get quite enough love out there. What do you think about the body cameras?
I like the body cameras. Actually, I love the body cameras. When we first initiated the body cameras, fraudulent complaints against law enforcement officers were reduced by over 90%.
Oh, wow.
So before it was, this deputy did this or this police officer did that. And we said, well, let's pull the tape back and actually see what happened.
Right.
And it was absolutely unbelievable what happened. Some people would say, this is another county, isn't it? And they said, no, this is Seminole County. They said, I apologize, sir. I must be in the wrong jurisdiction. It happened somewhere, but it wasn't with you.
Plenty more with Sheriff Dennis Lemma and Stump the Clarkie after this very short break. It is Behind the Law on ESPN 580 Orlando.
Nice.
All right, so now we're going to play a little dumb game, Sheriff.
Okay.
It'll be something you know a lot about because they like to see me lose.
That dry erase board is going to be yours. We're going to use that for our trivia game.
Okay.
Just going to write down 4 little answers. All the answers, I think 3 of the answers are numbers, and the other answer is a word, but it's the closest person is the one that wins.
Closest to the pen?
Right,
Yeah.
closest to the pen.
You guys ready?
We are
You
ready.
Now back to Behind the Law with Justin Clark, right here on ESPN 580 Orlando.
Welcome back to the program. It is Behind the Law, ESPN 580 Orlando. Justin Clark joining you as we do every single weeknight, 8 o'clock p.m. on our favorite sports radio station. OG Brianna is here at the end of the table. Hi, OG. How are you?
What's up, Justin?
New Brianna is here to my right, producing the program. Hello, New Brianna. How are you?
I'm good.
321-282-1055. You can also watch the TV shows this weekend and every weekend. It's 12:30 p.m. Saturday afternoon on CBS. You have Real Estate with me, attorney Justin Clark. And then it's this show, Behind the Law, on television at 10 a.m., TV 27. Check us out right there. You can also watch the program on social media at Behind the Law Radio, Facebook, Instagram, any social media platform. Ask us any questions right there. I have a very special guest today. He is your sheriff of Seminole County, Sheriff Dennis Lemma. Sheriff, how are you, sir?
I am wonderful.
Thanks for joining us. I've been trying to get you here for a while. You know, we've been trying to meet for a while. You're doing a great job up in Seminole County. Seminole County politics is something that, if you're going to be sheriff, you have to sort of be a politician. But how do you juggle being a family guy? You have children, you have a wife, running, 1,200 people in your department, I believe, and you have to be out there meeting people, shaking hands, running for office sometimes, helping people run for office. How do you really juggle and balance all of those things?
You know, for me, it's a lifestyle. I think that we have such a great working relationship with our community leaders, my fellow constitutional officers, our commissioners. You know, we really, really come together and work for what's in the best interest of our citizens. And what I learned about being sheriff is you are quite literally never off. there's never a time where either you're in town or out of town. You're elected to be the sheriff 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for a 4-year term. And for me, I try to bring my family to as many of those events and speaking engagements as I can when they're appropriate, because I think it's good for our youth to be exposed to this type of stuff and really have a tendency to serve. And that's kind of what I try to do to balance it out.
I just got a question from the audience here, and I have to ask you, and it's from Scott Sturgill, actually, someone we both know, and he said, what is it like to have the best hair of any sheriff in the state?
Well, actually, I think Scott has the best hair of anybody that's there, but it's... thank you. I love you, Scott. So.
Yeah, all right. So we're going to play a quick game. We're going to play Stump the Clarkie Sheriff. It's 4 questions for a chance to win my money. Here we go.
All right, and now it's time for Stump the Clarkie. Come on, Clarkie. We need you to get over here. We got some great trivia questions we want you to answer. Come on, Clarkie. Get over here.
Thank you, Fulton Alum. New Brianna, what is the category today?
So today's trivia is all about sheriffs.
Okay. I told you, Sheriff.
Of course.
I knew you might know something about this one. All right, question number 1.
How many sheriff's offices operate across the U.S.?
Sheriff's offices in the U.S. Oh, my goodness. I don't know.
Officer.
All right, question 2.
How long is a sheriff's term in Florida?
Pretty sure we might have just given that away.
I think so. Thank God I was listening.
Yeah, if you get that one wrong, we got issues. All right, question number 3.
How many sheriffs are there in Florida?
All right, one more question. Stump the Clarkie for a Wednesday night here with Sheriff Dennis Lemma. Go ahead.
What Florida county does not have a sheriff?
Oh, jeez. Sheriff's writing fast over there,
Yeah,
guys.
he is. I'm like, what are you doing?
I have a funny feeling today's not going to go well for me.
Is he doing math or is he actually writing down answers?
What county doesn't have a sheriff? Is that what you said?
Yes.
I suddenly forgot
Is
all
this
the counties
easy?
in
I mean,
Florida.
is it easy or hard? Is this one of those sort of random counties I'm not going to know? I
No,
can't get a hint.
it's not hard. It's easy.
It's not
Hiding my
hard.
paper here. So.
Yeah, you should, because I'm over here just... How many counties are in?
All right. Let it score this game. All right, Brianna, what was the question?
Question 1. How many sheriff's offices operate across the U.S.?
Sheriff Dennis Lemma, what do you have?
I have approximately 3,100.
3,100. OG, Brianna, what did you say?
I said 3,000.
3,000. Oh, wow. You guys are pretty close here. I'm way too high then, obviously, at 22,000. So what's the right answer?
Approximately 3,000.
3,000. That is for Sheriff. Gets the win on that one.
Well, wait
What?
now.
What did he say?
Oh, you were
3,000.
closer. I said
really?
31.
He's at 31.
Oh,
I
you said 3,000?
3.
Sorry, Brianna. Brianna.
I was like, wait now.
Gets the point. All right, 1-0-0. Brianna pulls ahead. Question number 2.
How long is a sheriff's term in Florida?
And Brianna, go ahead.
I think he said 4 years, wasn't it?
And I went with 4 years as well, Sheriff. I'm
4 years.
presuming that you said 4 as well. All right. Well, I'll take the point. Question number 3.
How many sheriffs are there in Florida?
All right. See, I think this is how many counties minus 1 based on the next question. But I don't know how many counties are in Florida.
Right.
I forgot.
Right.
So I went with 68. Sheriff, what do you have?
66.
So I was pretty close,
I said
actually.
55.
55. What's the right answer?
66.
66, right on the nose. All right, you actually get double points for that.
Literally.
Okay, the last question of the day for a Stump the Clarkie Sheriff Dennis Lemma edition. What was the question?
What Florida county does not have a sheriff?
Sheriff, what do you have?
Miami-Dade.
I was going to say that, too. Go ahead, Brianna. What did you have?
Nothing.
You have no answer
No
whatsoever?
answer.
Okay. I was going to go Miami-Dade, but then I put Martin. I don't know why. What's the right answer? I imagine
Miami-Dade.
Miami-Dade County.
Which
Beautiful.
will be changing soon.
What? Oh, yeah? They're
Oh.
getting
With
one?
the passing of Amendment 10, they
okay.
will have a sheriff in Miami-Dade in 5 years or so.
Why are they making them do that? What's the reasoning?
Well, I think we worked hard and lobbied to support the constitutional independence of all of the constitutional officers.
Got it.
And to take away the charter's ability to minimize the independence of constitutional officers.
Gotcha. You're listening to Behind the Law, ESPN 580 Orlando. Attorney Justin Clark joining as we do every single weeknight at 8 o'clock p.m. Today, joined by Sheriff Dennis Lemma. He is your sheriff of Seminole County. Sheriff, one of the questions I've always had is how do the sheriff's department work alongside the cities within that county? I've always wondered how that relationship really works.
Yeah. Well, in Seminole County, we are absolutely blessed because myself, the 8 police chiefs, now we have 7 municipalities, but 8 chiefs of police because we have the airport police department. And we come together at least 2 to 3 times per month to talk, to collaborate. We all feel that there's not one of us that's smarter than all of us, and the collective IQ of the group is always greater than one individual. So the bad guys don't understand or respect jurisdictional boundaries.
Right.
So the people who are committing crimes in, let's say, the city of Sanford are also committing crimes in unincorporated Seminole County. And I think that our public expects us to come together and to collaborate. And we've had a blessed relationship with them. And I know that that's not the case with my counterparts across the state.
Right.
What we have in Seminole is very unique when it comes to that.
So let's say a Seminole County deputy is pulling over for speeding a car, right? And then they go into the city of Sanford. Can you continue to pursue them to stop them, or how does it work?
Yeah, so a sheriff has countywide jurisdiction. And I think since you're covering sheriff, I think it's important to kind of mention that there are aspects of being a sheriff that people don't even understand. Like the Constitution and our partnership with the County Commission gives us 4 primary responsibilities by law. The sheriff is the chief law enforcement officer of the county. It's because their power is granted directly from the people. We are also the chief correctional officer of the county, and we have a 1,400-bed facility where we're providing a heck of a lot more than care, custody, and control. But we're also, and you're probably familiar with this, we're also, by Constitution, the chief administrative and executive officer of the circuit and county courts, which means any civil process, security for the judges, the judiciary is all the sheriff's responsibility. And last and probably most holistically, and probably relevant to your question, is the sheriff is responsible to be the conservator of the peace, period. And although we've got a great relationship with our cities, and this scenario would never happen in Seminole County, but if a city ever said, you know what, we can't afford to keep our police department in operation, or we're going to close it down, we're simply not going to provide those services, it would be the sheriff's constitutional responsibility to pick up primary law enforcement services to the citizens living within that jurisdiction.
Got it. There's a new TV show that you've probably heard a million people talk about now, Live PD, right? Have they ever approached you about trying to get in here at all?
Yeah, they have. And you know, some of the executive producers are family members with folks on our team.
Oh, really?
And, you know, I haven't done it because, you know, what we do in Seminole County with an extremely low crime rate is not to sensationalize what we do. And I understand other jurisdictions are constantly taking bad guys to jail, but we spend in Seminole County most of our time preventing crime from occurring because we think that the most significant impact that we can have on crime is to prevent it from occurring in the first place. And that simply just doesn't make sexy television. I mean, it's a lot of work that goes into it, but ultimately, if you look at the crime rate, we're the lowest crime rate in any one of our contiguous Central Florida communities, and half of what the 47-year low is across the state of Florida.
Which is pretty incredible when you consider that it's a densely populated county. I mean, It really is. So, I mean, it's incredible what you guys are doing. You know, one of the hot button issues that I know many of you are talking about and oftentimes thinking about, especially if you have school-aged children, is our school safety. And I think we need to address that with Sheriff Dennis Lemma right on the other side of this break. One more segment ahead of Behind the Law, ESPN 580 Orlando.
Joe Lopez was playing Stump the Clark, and he got 3 out of 4 correct.
Oh, really?
He put 3,800 as well on the first question.
Oh, I mean, he was playing right now? Oh, so not too bad.
No, I told him.
I don't know where I came up with 22,000. I guess I'm just dumb.
22,000.
That's quite a bit.
Yeah.
I had to think. I was like, how many counties are in Florida? Okay, now times that by 50.
Yeah, that's why. I was just like, whatever. I'm not good at math.
And I mean, I came pretty close. I mean, 3,100. I mean,
Yeah.
I did not know.
That's very
I just assumed.
When you said 31, I was like, that must be the number because that's wildly accurate.
No, I was just.
All right. What am I missing? Big picture that we want to hit. I want to celebrate you, Sheriff.
I think that. I mean, it's just kind of what we do. I mean,
All right.
it's the.
Ready?
Yep.
Now back to Behind the Law with Justin Clark, right here on ESPN 580 Orlando.
One final segment ahead of Behind the Law. Justin Clark here with you as we are every single weeknight. I have Brianna here and Brianna, both, two Briannas, spelled differently, pronounced the same, just to make life complicated for me. But I like you both, so that's good. I think you're both doing a great job. It's complicated having two Briannas, names spelled differently, pronounced the same, right? I mean,
That's right.
I can't
That's
believe
true.
you found a Brianna to replace you,
I know.
spelled differently, pronounced the same. You can't. How does that even happen?
It doesn't. But I
But,
mean,
Coincidence.
That's
Yeah.
crazy. Joined today by Sheriff Dennis Lemma. He is the sheriff in Seminole County. Sheriff, first of all, we appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
We are very, very happy with the job you're doing up there. Proud as residents of Seminole County of what you're doing up there. So keep up the good work. One of the issues certainly that you must deal with all the time is the safety of our students. And Seminole County school system is known as a very good school system, but you never know. I think we all know where we were sitting 20 whatever years ago when Columbine, Colorado happened and the shooting out there. And that was what really started this whole madness over the last 20-something years. And I think we've been somewhat fortunate in Seminole County, but what are some things that we're doing to really make sure that the most terrible thing that could happen doesn't happen here?
Yeah. We talk about it on school campuses, but I mean, let's really think about it. I mean, it's our responsibility as a civilized society and law enforcement to protect our most vulnerable. And kids will always be at the top of that list of vulnerable people. But what's important is law enforcement leaders and executives to anticipate the storm before it arrives. And, I'm proud to say that, 3 years ago, we worked hard to make sure that every single one of our 70 public school campuses, and, we've got 70,000 plus kids going to school, but every single one of those campuses has a dedicated, fully trained law enforcement officer on every campus, to include our charter schools and for the campuses that have a population of more than 1,000 kids, we have more than one deputy or police officer on those campuses. But we took it a step further is partnership with Walt Griffin, great superintendent of schools and wonderful school board members. We had taken a captain of the sheriff's office and made that person the actual director of school safety and security. And this is the first of its kind anywhere in the state. And again, it's 3 years in the running.
Right.
But our captain makes every decision and is embedded with our superintendent's office so that we are lockstep on every decision, and we use technology with the RAVE Safety Panic app and train. But we're really, really blessed to have armed, professionally trained deputy sheriffs fulfilling that function. The worst thing you can do is ask somebody to perform at a role when they don't want to.
Right.
And, I know for other jurisdictions, something has to be done, right? I'm a big Second Amendment guy. If I wasn't sheriff and I was just Dennis Lemma that worked in X, Y, and Z, I would not go anywhere without carrying my firearm with me. And, I talk to citizens a lot, and I tell them that, look, an armed population here is why our enemy doesn't try to attack us on foot on our own soil, because they know our citizenship exercises their constitutional right to own and bear arms, and behind every blade of grass is a red-blooded American ready to stand up and defend that. But for schools, I think that we've evolved to a time where all of our campuses need professionally trained law enforcement officers on those campuses, not only for safety and security, but I think it's important to build and foster a relationship with our youth. And we teach a curriculum on that campus as well.
I like that. So growing up in Tennessee, I remember we would have tornado drills, I believe. You get under your desk or whatever. I'm sure the people who grew up in Florida probably had hurricane drills. And you go to a hotel, they have a fire drill. But the school shooting drill, so to speak. And I know we had an issue at Lake Brantley maybe, a year ago, and we had the Seminole County school system on this show to help us understand that. I mean, what do you think we should do drill-wise for these students to really prepare for active shooter?
Yeah. We have to make sure that there's not drill fatigue. You look at the fire drills. I mean, even when the fire alarm goes off in our building, you get drill fatigue where you just automatically assume that it's just an accident or it's a drill. And I think if we're not careful, the frequency of the drills kind of create that complacency, not only for students but for staff. I think it's important that you drill. I think that's important that you have an operational plan that you can put, but it comes down to leadership. You need people who are going to lead the effort, that are going to grab that situation. When we just had a suicide at Lake Mary High School, and they were on the campus, brought a gun onto campus, and but the leadership there on the school campus and the security at the school, and my partnership with Walt Griffin, the superintendent of the schools, allowed us to go in there and maintain control and order. And one of the things that I did was I got on the school PA system and shared with every single student on the campus before I had the news conference exactly what I was going to say at the news conference.
Oh, wow.
And I think that's important because sometimes there's this lack of knowledge that turns into controversy and then this perceived threat. If somebody hears something or sees a photograph of a gun, next thing you know, we have 1,000 or 2,000, 3,000 parents concerned about that. And I tell people all the time, it is safe to send your kids to school in Seminole County. And in the event that it were not safe, you'd see me or the superintendent standing in front of the news camera saying we're closing the school down for this particular reason.
How proud of you were you of those students in Lake Mary?
I tell you what, I mean, they are just remarkable. And I'm across the board, I think that what we're doing is we're raising a population that is aware, that is connected. They know the right thing to do, and they know how to advocate and have a voice for standing up what is right. And I think that anytime somebody is going to be depressed or act out violently either towards themselves or others, there are typically some underlying pre-existing conditions that somebody else saw.
Sure.
And it's important for us as a society to feel comfortable talking about mental health, mental illness. Just on the way here, we've got a campaign going on that mental health matters, and we've got billboards across the county. And just on my way to your office here, I saw a big billboard, and I think to myself, 20 years ago, you would have never seen that. And I think we're making some progress now.
Where do we need to go with metal detectors? Should we have them in schools, not have them in schools? Does it really depend on what county you're in? Well, what do you think about metal detectors?
Yeah. Well, metal detectors are only as good as your ability to staff them. So I think the natural thing is for people to say, hey, let's get metal detectors. And, if you think about the process of sending, 3,000 people through a metal detector at the 20 minutes that kids are showing up prior to school, it potentially is a logistics nightmare. And then as a father of an elementary public school child here in Seminole County and a freshman in high school, it doesn't make me feel safe and secure dropping my son off at an area where they got to go through the metal detector, because with these open campuses, metal detector is only as good as your ability to go through it. And with open campuses, I mean, it just, the opportunity to get something that you're not supposed to have. The better option is to make sure that people who are on campus prepared to react and respond immediately. And I can't overemphasize that enough, because we've seen across the national stage some law enforcement officers that have not done it properly. Our job is to engage the threat immediately and try to neutralize it as quickly as we can.
Father, husband, sheriff. In 1992, when you really got into this business, where did you think Dennis Lemma would be in 2019?
Yeah. I never viewed myself as aspiring to be a sheriff or a chief of police. And, one of the things, and I talk about kind of the success that I've had people invest in me and mentor and groom me. But what I did in every position and every opportunity that I was able to be provided is I tried to do the best job I could in that position. I never avoided making the tough calls. I never got into the position to win a popularity contest. I simply wanted to do what is right. And I felt like if I work hard every single day and I look in the mirror and the only person I please is the person staring back at me in the mirror, that other people will notice and recognize. And I remember when Sheriff Esslinger was deciding to retire, he spoke to me. He says, I mean, it was 3 years before he ever retired. He said, I'm thinking about retiring. Are you interested in running for sheriff? And my response to him at the time was, you know, my preferred method is to serve as your chief deputy for the remainder of my career. But if you're telling me that that is not an option and you're going to move on and do something different, I absolutely want to be the person that is charged with carry on our legacy. Not his legacy and not my legacy, but the hardworking, dedicated men and women of this agency that have been working for decades towards accomplishing good things for our community.
Sheriff Dennis Lemma, keep up the good work, Sheriff. All right,
Thank you so much for
coming on. If you open invite anytime you want to join us, all right?
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Keep the good work up in Seminole County. For OG Brianna and New Brianna, my name is Justin Clark, and I don't know much, but I do know one little thing.
What's that?
I will see you right back here tomorrow night on ESPN 580 Orlando. Thanks for watching, guys.